Booktube, the community that's supposed to be all about books, all about reading, and the fundamental idea that those who read a lot are smarter than everyone else, which is a misguiding concept in itself, but we'll get into that. The kind of community one with any bookish questions can run to and seek out answers to suit their needs. We're all about the books all the time, but there's been this undercurrent within the community. Drama always seems to leak in, and usually it is the result of somebody's dented ego or the community's exposed vanity as a whole. Whether it's a discussion, a joke, or an opinion. People who talk about the sponsorship deals, the superficial mindset, and the questionable intent of the community are usually the ones to fade in the background unnoticed, they're invited to the club, or they're banned altogether. The level of exposure this community has avoided until now has been relatively low. People get caught up in the rat race like anyone in the real world and soon recognizes the only way to keep up is to lie. But the masks that are donned to hide the truth behind what this community is really about have started slipping. People are starting to ask questions, and people are not as willing to hide in the shadows. Whether it's through admission on their YouTube channel or a string of discussions on Guru Gossip, people are coming out of the woodwork to call out the toxicity of Booktube.
Listen to me when I say they will never go away. Run. Welcome to the jungle.
It won't take long for any person on here to realize they're not as welcomed by the community when they're into adult horror or 80s sci-fi novels or even just movies. And even larger YouTubers who choose to take part in a bookish video or two are called out because they're taking away the attentions members of this community have been working for when these people have expressed they are not booktubers. They just love books. The idea that the main concern for this community is whether or not to shun authors, ban books, and cancel careers proves just how fragile their mindset really is. Right off the bat, newbies will recognize this skewed concept with booktubers, and that is that the quantity of their books seems to exceed the quality of their books. For a community that talks so much about consumerism, they really don't mind shelling out hundreds of dollars on the same YA novels that are literally copying off of each other. Although I'm not just referring to the massive libraries these girls fan out for their videos, their Instagram pictures, or their sponsors, the motivation behind this consumerism might be what has sparked such defense counterattack whenever the subject is even broached. On the surface, the materialism appears to be no more than just booktubers excited to get new books, excited to share their finds, their recommended, but then these videos start to take on a new form. Hauls and TBRs become unhauls, which, again, bring to question the intentions for this community. If readers are so excited to get these books, why do they get rid of the same ones in a month or two after admitting they haven't even read them? It's your money, and they're your books. You can do what you want, but you can't deny the fascination people have had for the bookworm has a stigma all its own, and I dare say most of these girls are in it for the image, not the reading. Steve Donahue approached the subject 5 years ago, recounting how his last trip to a book convention there were plenty of famous authors signing books, and there were even more booktubers who arrived on the scene, Instagram ready and books in hand to catch a pic with their favorite author.
There were dozens and dozens and dozens of montage and haul videos of people's experiences going to BEA and BookCon, and all of these popular booktubers getting on planes from all parts of the world and going to Chicago in order to wait in unending lines in order to meet the same 8 authors, the ones they talk about all the time on their channels. Despite the fact that they command an audience, have consistently told those audiences to read these 8 authors, they get to the end of the line, and the author is sitting there at the table, and there's no connection whatsoever. Popular, well-groomed, well-lit, well-edited booktubers who have intentionally made themselves into unpaid publicity hacks for these authors, and do they even get a thank you? No. If you are a booktuber who commands an audience of even 5,000 viewers, you don't need to go to Chicago to get an ARC. No publicist in the world is going to turn you down knowing that you have an audience of 5,000 people who are going to watch you hold up their book. You don't need to fly anywhere to get those books. I'm very good at sensing real readers, even from a great distance. These people do not read.
Naturally, this video sparked a reaction, and Booktube came out with claws.
I am here to share with you my favorite beauty products as a fake reader girl.
Those kinds of comments are hurtful.
Just because someone has studio lights and is wearing makeup means they're a fake reader.
Just because you didn't mean it that way doesn't mean that you didn't offend somebody and that you didn't hurt their feelings.
Basically, he's saying that because someone wears makeup, they can't be a reader.
As you know, real readers don't wear makeup. And since I do, it obviously means I'm a fake reader girl.
We need to always stop and think about what we say and what we're going to put on Booktube.
Random comment that a random middle-aged guy somewhere in America posted on a video saying that popular booktubers don't strike him as real readers.
He like makes some arrogant statement and then he laughs at himself like he's so much better than everybody else. And I'm not gonna pass judgment on him or on his videos because I would be doing the same thing that he's doing.
Because their videos are well filmed, well edited, well lit. The people in them seem to be really shiny. Kind of read that and I was like, really?
That because someone uses studio lights in their videos here on YouTube, which is a platform primarily made for entertainment, that they are fake and that they should not be a part of this community of readers.
I don't understand how you could even come to that conclusion.
That means that they don't read. You're accusing them basically of lying.
It didn't seem like it was Steve's or anybody's place to tell people what they should or should not be posting on Booktube.
These girls didn't even bother to take the time to listen, wondering if perhaps there were a few questionable examples in the community.
And they started off the video by making a remark about a particular book.
I no longer read for myself, but for others.
We're looking at 108 hours in 1 month, which comes out to roughly 4.5 days worth of reading in a single month.
As the year ended, I asked myself why I didn't film a year wrap-up. Oh, I only read 37 books. A big failure in the Booktube community. I had read 100 books the previous year.
I had a Voxer conversation with this person earlier this year. I was really surprised that they hadn't read it. They weren't going to read it because they thought that they would find it racist.
I think a lot of content creators who make videos and post them to YouTube can be quite honest and say that they, to some extent, filter themselves because they fear people's reaction, what people will say, what they will do.
My shelf no longer resembled any semblance of myself. Just like clothes can define someone's style, bookshelves tell a lot about a person who they are.
This is if the people who are reading these books are only reading the books in physical form, because I think most of us know a lot of people on Booktube are also listening to audiobooks, and audiobooks get through books much slower than the average person does just reading a physical copy.
My bookshelves became the product of what the Booktube community considered hot or hype. They became a product of consumerism and less a reflection of me. This is why Booktube was bad for me as a reader.
Started Booktube, maybe even started watching Booktube, my reading has taken a turn for the worst.
What I object to is telling thousands of people, both of them, in statements that imply that they've read the book.
And on top of that, this is if you're reading at 225 words per minute.
Exhibit A. I've put a lot of pressure on myself to read more and read faster and just knock out the book like it ain't nothing. Like, just knock it out.
So the way that I speed read is I definitely read all bits of dialogue, and I typically read the first and last sentence of most of the paragraphs. But basically, I could read a full page of text in like a second without reading everything individually.
Well, do I want to read more books for the sake of reading more stories, or do I want to read it because I feel like I gotta compete to have content so that people can be interested? Because if you're not reading and your channel is about reading, it jacks everything up pretty much.
And so I asked, have you read this book? No, but they were familiar with the history. They had seen the film adaptation several times.
Everyone turned a blind eye to the few cases that might prove his statement to be somewhat true, only concerned for their own image and the idea that people might question their own motives. But Donahue was right. Booktube has evolved into a fashion show to see who can look the best in red lipstick and vintage reading glasses, who can sport the most books or the least amount of books to claim they're not as superficial as the rest. It's become a beauty contest, and the brightest smile, the prettiest bookcase with ivy vines and fairy lights gets to take home first prize. The term #FakeReaderGirl was spread all over Booktube, Twitter, and Instagram as defense to prove just how much readers really read. And again, this was done in the most materialistic manner. Instead of proving that they actually read a book, they brag about how many new ones they buy. Instead of discussing certain themes of a book, they give a vague synopsis and an excuse to ward off spoilers. And the contest doesn't end with Booktube. Every form of social media revolve around the idea that these girls read a lot. But for a community all about books, they don't seem to glean much from reading.
Like, most people don't read for pleasure. Of the people who read for pleasure, only a small proportion buy books. Of the people who buy books, only a small proportion buy difficult books. It's a specialty market. A book is like a portrait as opposed to a photograph. You know, a photograph, it's click, that's that. A portrait you layer on and layer on and layer on and work over for weeks. You still have the same single image, but there's this depth to it. And a book enables you to think and then rethink and think and then rethink. And so you can go deeper in a book than you can, I would say, in any other medium.
Maybe it's the content of spicy fairy porn they seem to fawn over, or the massive descriptions, or the page count that makes every booktube unique in their own way. These bragging points prove only how superficial their idea of reading actually is, when it's turned into a pissing contest just to be able to put out 3 videos a week rambling about nothing. There's never any insight. There are never any real questions for the author aside from diversity checklists and identity points. You get a pass if the main character is gay, but is a fetish if the Asian character likes comic books. Not to mention the level of competition these girls propose in all the wrong areas, giving newcomers on the scene the wrong idea. Not just about reading, but the community and what it's supposed to represent. There are videos on here of people expressing how they had to leave because Booktube is just too much to keep up with, when in actuality, these girls are playing a game.
And as my channel is growing, I'm exposed to people that make it a numbers game, and it's never gonna be about that for me. And it's making me, number one, go into a reading slump, to not want to be as involved, because it's not about numbers for me. And when people make it about that, like, it just makes me anxious.
This pressure to have studio quality videos, to have the IKEA bookshelves, to look a certain way, to act a certain way, to never be controversial, never have a negative opinion. The downside is, and a lot of people leave, because if you have a negative opinion about something, it's either dismissed, not seen at all, regarded as attention seeking, or given the whole Poppy War drama, completely flipped and turned a narrative around.
To be a lot of talk, at least among the booktubers that I watch, about things like reader fatigue, things like feeling pressured to read books that are on your TBR and feeling really guilty when you don't read books on your TBR, a pressure to read popular books because booktubers with large numbers are reading and promoting those books, so there seems to be the thought that if I also read these, then my numbers might also grow.
I got in a big reading slump. I kind of felt guilty for not reading more, having that pressure from not only like usual like normal booktube stuff, but like the pressure from not reading when everyone else was reading more. Like last year, it was just a lot, and it was really intimidating to try and come back or to try and read more.
Not to mention the networking, the drama, and the clique mentality meant for queen bees and wannabes who only hope to catch the eye of their favorite author, their favorite publisher, or anyone in general to further their career on YouTube. Because that is what Booktube is really about. It's hard to determine who is really about the reading and who is just here to fit in, to be seen as smarter, but there's a catch in both these categories. It isn't merely reading that makes you smarter, though this concept goes along with the stigma. It's what you read and what you learn that makes you smarter.
Selfie or whatever with them, and essentially all you have become, or all a lot of these people are becoming, is unpaid publicists, to be a walking advertisement of this book. I want everybody to know this book. I want them to read it. It's my favorite book. And there is nothing wrong with that. But I think that the problem that Steve is trying to bring up, and the problem that I even see, is this lack of quality in the books that we promote. Because let me be honest and frank with you. Publishing companies need you to promote books. You don't need a publishing company. A writer is going to write and get their work out there no matter what. Why do you think fan fiction is so popular? But a publishing company needs you to promote their authors, the author's books, and to go out there and spread the word as far and as wide as you possibly can. Sure. Great literature is just a book that is authentic to itself, and it tells an authentic story from beginning to end. I'm saying that they're not fully developed to be as great as they can be. Companies have been pumping out severely underdeveloped books lately. I don't know how many books on Booktube, and I'm saying this again, I have seen that are completely underdeveloped but super, super hype. Whether a book is great or fully developed can and is a very factual thing. It just simply has to be authentic to the character, authentic to the plot, and authentic to the world.
And I don't think Booktube is gauging what is good by the content of the story. Lately, they've been judging books by their covers, their authors, and whether or not the publishing company is verified in social justice politics, when actually, they're more happy to ship their favorite MC with a rapist who drugged her. Are you sure you guys are feminist? Because if we can't cancel A Court of Thorns and Roses for being problematic, I think you guys have a lot of nerve coming after the classical literature that have lasted hundreds of years. But this lack of respect for the classics doesn't stem from not having read them, rather how they're reading them. Everything is taken at surface level, and that is how a lot of modern YA is written. Is it any wonder then that these girls can't discern for themselves what is literal and what is metaphorical? And this is also the reason they can't look beyond the flaws of certain materials. No matter the time period or the historical factors involved, classical literature is apparently supposed to uphold the same values we do today, when in fact society was very different hundreds of years ago and many flaws were overlooked. Modern day politics has taken on the form of a new religion. We can't just disagree on something and have a discussion or a conversation because our egos are so fragile they make anyone with a different opinion the enemy. And this is what has destroyed the community. Hell, we can't even have a discussion about how there are some girls on here who are pretending to read as much without stirring up everyone in the community just to serve their own shattered ego. Books aren't toys, they're not tokens for bragging peace, they're tools. They're art, they are the future. They are what separate men from animals, and the collective that recognizes this is superior within the community. Because otherwise we're only in it for ourselves. There are plenty of examples of literature warning against the restriction of thought, of art, of writing, and I think that it is ironic these examples are being brushed off and ignored because a lot of these girls don't seem to recognize without that freedom, they wouldn't even have what they love. How many feminists are out here bragging about the strong, ultra-feminine queen to represent them? But then there was a time when this was restricted. There was a time when female writers were restricted because publishing companies didn't think they would sell. The point is not to wallow in these moments of history, but to learn from them. Instead, we are regressing. Readers in this community might not be aware, but they are sabotaging the community and having as much of an effect for writers as well as readers. We'll all be back in the dark days when writers couldn't write what they want and readers had limited material pushing ideals they want us to have. Instead of gatekeeping being on our way, it's a rabid Twitter mob of fans or ex-fans, or people who never even read the book to begin with. Steve Donahue tried to open the discussion of fake reader girls. It was not meant as an attack on the community, but an opener for dialogue. It just goes to show how surface level these girls are that this viewpoint was taken as an insult rather than a discussion. But maybe these girls have more to hide than they let on.
Going on is that I'm very disappointed. I am so disappointed in how people are carrying themselves. It's one thing to disagree with someone's opinion. That's fine. But it's another thing altogether to relentlessly bully someone and encourage other people to bully them.
And I have made some really, really good friends through here, but I've also seen some things just in my experience in being in this community in the past few months that are turning me off a little bit from making videos.
Was please do not approach our photo shoots unless you have permission to be there / are invited.
Just to see someone cut down for the mere pleasure of watching drama unfold.
And I don't know like what the tension or issue was with the big booktuber like photo.
Getting caught up in the toxicity in the numbers game is really easy if you surround yourself with those kind of people.
I did cry about it. I'm not gonna lie.
You might not always have a mob of people behind you lifting you up and saying that your opinion's the one that matters because that's what the majority agree with.
But I am just seeing a little bit of that, and I'm not gonna lie, it has been affecting like my motivation to make videos and my motivation to read, and I don't want that anymore, so I might take a step back.
It really saddens me to see something that he loves so much essentially be destroyed because of these people on Twitter who just jump on the bandwagon to participate in drama.
If you were invited by a larger booktuber or someone with a little bit more of a following than you, and you get really excited, you're like, oh my gosh, I am gonna be included in this.
You're just subscribed to me to try to get me to subscribe to you. Don't waste your time. If you're commenting on my video just to appear that, you know, you watched it and you didn't, I don't need your comment. I'm here for a genuine connection and to have fun and to talk about books. And if you're making it about anything else, I don't need you here.
I have heard from multiple people who were within the photo that they were invited into the photo.
And it's really hard to see on Twitter how a lot of hateful comments towards Steve are getting a lot of likes and shares, and people are essentially high-fiving each other as if to say, look at all my new friends that I've made by saying these hateful things.
And then the weekend after, someone was like, well, you weren't really wanted there.
And we're gonna work on ignoring those people, and if I'm posting less, y'all just know I'm working on it. I'm working on recentering myself, so.
I've noticed the drama these girls keep an eye out for usually has to be taken out of context to even be made into an insult. Any opinion, no matter how tactfully made, if it's against the community, it is an attack and must be snuffed out. Anyone with a different political stance or an undesirable candidate is painted in the darkest shade possible, as if we're all meant to conform to this one-think way of seeing things, no matter what facts or merit our statements might hold. And even those who have made questionable statements, they're not just called out for being a little oblivious or maybe a little short-sighted, but instead they're mocked and made an example to bully off of the platform. What is so attractive about these vague gossip trends that make the community take off like it does when there are massive issues we could discuss, even in the problematic videos you mentioned? I'm sure Steve Donahue was not the first victim, but his video did seem to spark the spiral that sucked in a lot of future booktubers who realize the potential that drama holds. It's great clickbait, a great way to trick the algorithm into giving you more views, which lead to more subscribers, and people love gossip. Usually these videos are only meant to make themselves look better than the person being confronted, and the discussions feel more like a self-righteous nagging of a shrew who can't stand the fact that he had the gall to tell her she didn't need to wear that much makeup.
Scrolling through the vast land of the YouTubes, I was surrounded by females in their 20s being overly excited about young adult books, and all I found were tags and hauls and TBRs and all this other shit looking at the goddamn video, and then I had to find somebody.
Hey everyone! Oh, sorry about my lighting today, and I just moved into a new place, and I'm going to college.
It's more of just videos for the sake of making videos and not producing any substance.
Did this guy just make a 10-minute video saying he wasn't like other girls?
This person may or may not issue an apology, but it usually doesn't matter. Booktube will drag it out as long as it's fresh enough to sink their teeth into, sometimes going so far as to beat the dead horse out of it until there's nothing left but a hollow husk even the vultures won't touch. As in the case of the makeup drama scandal a few years ago, which I did make a couple of videos about. They're cringy AF because I was just starting out, but if you do want to watch them, they're on my BitChute account. The link is in the description. They were making rants, vocally screaming into their cameras in rage at this guy, even going so far as to make ugly parodies mocking his statement. Half these videos were made after he had taken down his video and issued an apology. You would think that the purpose of bringing up said drama is for the discussion, since a lot of booktubers open these videos up with, "We need to talk about this." But Booktube has proven time and time again they're not interested in having a discussion or opening a dialogue unless that dialogue is to shit on a specific thing one person said, did, or even wrote that might be socially unacceptable. Personal offense is a favorite since Gossip Guru is a recurring thing on this platform. You know, that site that's specifically meant for gossip. But some bookish people seem to take offense that anyone would have anything negative to say about the community, so much so they have to call it out in defense of their favorite queens. And ironically enough, these booktubers have gone from canceling other smaller booktubers to canceling books. I guess this wouldn't bother me so much if Booktube actually had a discussion about these things instead of going off in a manner that paints everyone opposing their community their arch nemesis. They don't seem to care about the drama they're starting. They just want to be seen, heard, and trending. But what else would you expect from the teen girls that never grew out of their Twilight phase? The year is 2008, and the first of the Twilight movies is about to be released. The 4 novels have reached record sales, and every tween girl and their 40-something mothers have come out, wearing Team Jacob or Team Edward shirts, flashing neon-colored signs showing their love of the fandom, and Forks is forever now on a tourist destination set on a map for anyone driving through Washington. Little did anyone realize at the time, for every girl fangirling over the werewolf vampire saga, there were just as many haters to match. Everyone online took to storm, not for a shipping contest, but a Twilight contest. Who could love or hate Twilight the most? Lindsay Ellis made a pretty good video discussing the controversies of the teenage girl and the haters to match, and while I don't agree with everything in the video, I don't think Stephenie Meyer's writing should have sparked the hate that it did. I also agree that the annoying teen girls screeching over their favorite love interest and fanfiction was probably the main cause of this underlying hatred. Twilight is far from gone, a permanent stain in the back of our minds, but the memory of the craze is a distant one, so much so I feel I can finally breathe relief. Though where there is one, there will be more to follow. Booktubers have gone nuts for the high elf, royal elf, Beauty and the Beast type stories that, similar to 50 Shades of Grey, usually include kidnapping one or more persons, sticking them in a place they don't want to be, but let's face it, they complain otherwise when taken away, and they are obsessed with the chosen one trope. While I get that everyone wants to feel special at some point or other, these books excel at feeding into the insecurities of a fanbase who notoriously live through their characters. There's nothing wrong with enjoying these types of books, but I do find it kind of comical that Booktube loves bringing up consumerism and how bad it is, like buying books is the problem. The reason publishing companies and marketing companies and all these higher end sponsorship unboxing deals go on is because of what's trending. And the books are out there. They have just as much right as the next to survive, succeed, and excel. The reason these things take off like they do is because of the demand. And it is disappointing to see that the surface level superficial bullshit seems to take top billing because it's easy to digest, it's addictive, and it's something that's not going to go away anytime soon. It only takes on new forms. As a whole, if this is what Booktube stands for, if this is what we're all about, we're not going to get very far as a community. What you read constantly and take in doesn't just reveal the type of person you are, your preferences, and your opinions. It can also help or hinder the level of personal growth one experiences at a time. And I really think that this is why Booktube is as shallow as it is, because this is what they're all about. They're not about finding the hidden, deeper meanings in a subject, they're not interested in talking points, and the only purpose for reading a classic is to fill out a college essay just to prove how smart you are. I think it does say a lot about booktubers that these are their primary choices for fiction. I think the reason The Chosen One is such a popular trope in YA romance, and why the Beauty and the Beast is a recurring theme, is because it's meant to be an escape from responsibilities for a while, meant as an escape from the reality that guys like this don't exist, and a handsome fairy prince is not going to come and kidnap you, throw you into the lap of luxury, and magically solve all your problems. Everyone wants to feel special at some point, and the truth is most of us don't. It's an escape from the reality that life is hard work, romance is hard work. It helps feed into the entitlement aspect when these days everyone is special, everyone is a queen, everyone is a boss babe without having to actually fight for the title. That's because this community is not about fighting imperfections, just pretending they're not there. None of these books seem to raise questions. They don't challenge anyone, they don't make you think about the choices you make as a person, about right or wrong, and seems to blur the spectrum as to what it means to be human, let alone good or bad, or whether morality has skewed itself so badly these days the only things we place value in are brands, luxuries, and personal interests. Real life is tough, and it has a bite to it that's unlike the gentle nip of a werewolf lover. If we can't find these things in the real world, the next best thing is to live it out vicariously through our books that we read and write.
over 20 years ago, when I first started telling people when I was a teenager that I wanted to be a writer, I was met with this same kind of sort of fear-based reaction, and people would say, aren't you afraid you're never going to have any success? Aren't you afraid the humiliation of rejection will kill you? Aren't you afraid that you're going to work your whole life at this craft and nothing's ever going to come of it, and you're going to die on a scrap heap of broken dreams with your mouth filled with bitter ash of failure? But when it comes to writing, the thing that I've been sort of thinking about lately and wondering about lately is why. You know, is it rational? Is it logical that anybody should be expected to be afraid of the work that they feel they were put on this earth to do for so long? And somehow we've completely internalized and accepted collectively this notion that creativity and suffering are somehow inherently linked, and that artistry in the end will always ultimately lead to anguish. And the question that I want to ask everybody here today is, are you guys all cool with that idea? Like, are you comfortable with that? Because you look at it even from an inch away, and I'm not at all comfortable with that assumption. I think it's odious, and I also think it's dangerous, and I don't want to see it perpetuated into the next century. I think better if we encourage our great creative minds to live, and I definitely know that in my case, in my situation, it would be very dangerous for me to start sort of leaking down that dark path of assumption, particularly given the circumstance that I'm in right now in my career, which is, like, check it out, I'm pretty young, I'm only about 40 years old, I still have maybe another 4 decades of work left in me, and it's exceedingly likely that anything I write from this point forward is going to be judged by the world as the work that came after the freakish success of my last book, right? I should just put it bluntly, because we're all sort of friends here now, it's exceedingly likely that my greatest success is behind me.
To some extent, we want to please our readers. We want our target audience to enjoy the books we put out, the stories we create, and we want them to fall in love with our characters as much as we do. But some things have been misleading readers of late, and that is the notion that that's all we're writing for. The sad truth is, this isn't just how readers see us, it's how publishing companies, marketing companies, and advertising companies see us too. We're meant to pull in a certain revenue, build up a certain audience, and sell books in order to make money so that we can sell more. But living in this consumerist society is only teaching us that what the reader says rules. Readers are taking it upon themselves to go on social media and announce whether or not a book or author is approved enough for reading. And we're just plain sick of it. This isn't just affecting writers though, it's affecting readers too. Readers who just want to enjoy a good book are now being accused of supporting the wrong kind of writer, as if art is supposed to hold a place on the spectrum of politics, when the whole point of art existing is to challenge our perspectives on these things, or just to escape them for a while. These notions have dribbled into the creative realm, and while some authors choose to ignore it and move on with their writing and their lives, risking whatever consequence practicing their personal freedoms might ensue upon their career and reputation, others are letting themselves be ruled by it. There are writers who are terrified of activism, or the wrong kind of activism. There are writers terrified to get up on Twitter because the moment somebody presents them with this double-edged sword, they're expected to seppuku themselves before the altar of identity politics like it's a freaking cult. Instead of placing their focus on writing good books, we're now expected to fill out a checklist to impress our agents and fan base to prove our worth in order to be deemed appropriate or inappropriate enough for society to handle. We're not allowed to express ourselves anymore, and plenty of writers hold back or get involved in this balancing act when it can only end one way, betraying yourself for the likelihood of the fans, and most of these fans aren't even people who read your book. The point is, as soon as we start policing what should or shouldn't be published, we're back at square one. The reason sites like fanfiction.net, Wattpad, and every other self-publishing platform has been successful online is because writers are finally able to express themselves without hindrance of approval from an agent or company just wanting to make the big bucks. Even people who don't write but get started on these sites develop their skills and find themselves with new careers they could have never imagined, giving them the kind of life they didn't even know they wanted. This freedom is important to us, and not just for us, but everyone out there who enjoys tweeting something free of censorship, or posting a YouTube video without getting banned, or just writing something that may give us the criticism we need to improve or the praise we need to continue. Validation isn't just something that exists to feed into our vanities. It can give us the extra push we need to keep going, to find people who can relate to our struggles and incorporate into a community that, for better or worse, gets it. But we're erasing every writer's right to be themselves. We present them with a blueprint to follow, a recipe, and one that's just as shallow and superficial as the one that is expected of cookie-cutter fiction today. Creativity will die, imagination's with it, and that warm, tingly feeling you get, that spark of hope, that fire that lights your eye when you come across something that makes you feel like you're changing as a person, it will be gone forever. And for what? Just so you could look good to your friends.
It's all ours, Montag. Look, these are all novels. All about people that never existed. The people that read them and makes them unhappy with their own lives, makes them want to live in other ways that can never really be. Come on, Montag. All this philosophy, let's get rid of it. It's even worse than the novels. Thinkers, philosophers, all of them saying exactly the same thing, only I am right. The others are all idiots. All stories of the day. Biography, that's called. An autobiography. My life, my diary, my memoirs, my intimate memoirs. Of course, when they started out, well, it was just the urge to write. Then after the second or third book, all they wanted was to satisfy their own vanity, to stand out from the crowd, to be different, to be able to look down on all the others. Ah, Robinson Crusoe. The Negroes didn't like that because of his man, Friday. And Nietzsche. Ah, Nietzsche. The Jews didn't like Nietzsche. Now, here's a book about lung cancer. You see, all the cigarette smokers got into a panic, so for everybody's peace of mind, we burn it. Ah, now this one must be very profound. The Ethics of Aristotle. Now, anybody that read that must believe he's a cut above anybody that hadn't. See, it's no good, Montag. We've all got to be alike. The only way to be happy is for everyone to be made equal. So, we must burn the books, Montag. All the books.
Books have been banned all throughout history. Sometimes they're taken off shelves due to public outcry, sometimes the government gets involved because they don't like the message of the writer. More times than not, books are banned because their content, whether fictional or not, proposes new ideas, suggestions for change to society and the world as a whole. And as we all know, ideas are dangerous. Now, I don't want to go all conspiracy theory here, but I'm well aware that getting rid of certain content for the safety of people has to do with a recognition that proposing new ideals and suggesting any change is a threat, and the status quo is important to maintain order. I'm not about to suggest we live in chaos either, but my ears perk whenever someone mentions banning a speaker, or restricting a certain leader's opportunities, or banning a book because from what I've learned, 9 times out of 10, it's never about the safety of the people, it's about control. I do find it ironic that the people who boast to be the most welcoming, diverse, open-minded people on the internet and in real life tend to be the more closed-minded, insecure, obnoxious group of the two. And anyone advocating for the restriction of a person's free speech or damning their credentials without context or destroying their reputation without merit is currently adding to a new type of plague on this earth. And unlike COVID, there is no vaccine. Nazi Germany is the most notorious and is first that comes to mind when we talk about book burnings and banned books, when Nazi-dominated student groups gathered all the books they thought were anti-German, Semitic, leftist, and liberal to be burned for the sake of their fellow man. I don't want to victim blame. There are books I've read that I felt offended by certain terms or references, books that made me angry at the unjust representation of a mental disorder, and even the romanticism of such dangerous mindsets. There are going to be plenty of questionable works out there, and we are not all alike, but forcing writers to all write the same for the sake of better judgment is only going to take away from having more diverse options. How are you going to get up there and cry out, "We need more diversity," while in the same breath condemning writers for writing their creative, uncomfortable truths? Just because it doesn't suit your needs specifically, the truth is that we're all flawed. None of us are perfect. We all have shit we need to work on, and living in denial of that while casting stone after stone at a person who's just trying to work through their own problems proves an indifference that I'd be ashamed to contribute to any reading community. On another level, boycotting an author's book just because you don't like their behavior is just as childish. For one, you can't coerce, manipulate, or blackmail someone into becoming a better person. Half the time, people who are in denial of these flaws are only focused on good appearances, and they will tell their fans whatever they want to hear, just to keep to their private life. As shitty as it sounds, that's their life, and it's their choices, and it's none of your business or responsibility to bring the person to your version of justice. Unless the person is actively breaking the law or actually hurting someone else, justice is not a necessary action anyways. Social media masses have taken it upon themselves to be the jury and judge in every situation, no matter how minor, adding to the detriment of every author's worst nightmare. It feels like we're stuck in a Black Mirror episode, only instead of enacting a death penalty, we're just looking for the next person's career to destroy, and why. Just as foolish is the notion that readers are restricting themselves from reading anything written by someone they didn't care for. For every writer you create an unrealistic expectation for, you're only raising the bar for disappointment. Instead of seeing celebrities, creatives, and public speakers as human, we look to them for everything because everyone wants someone to look up to. If there's someone we don't like as a person, we shut ourselves off from anything that has to do with them, excommunicating ourselves from any potential we had learning from this person, the good and the bad, and restricting access to the greater lessons we have to learn when it comes to compassion, understanding, learning and humility. Banned books are nothing new. Burning books is nothing new. All throughout history, people have tried to erase pieces of literature from the focus of their present time to keep them hidden from future generations. Some were lucky enough to slip through the cracks, while others we will never get the chance to learn about because closed-minded people took it upon themselves to be the judge for all mankind what should and shouldn't exist as art.